So we had some interesting information come out this past week about Game Pass, and I feel like every week now we talk about Game Pass in some way. I feel like Microsoft's been doing a pretty good job just kind of sprinkling information in as we go along here, whether it's a bunch of games getting dropped into the service or new features like FPS Boost or big third-party games releasing on the same day they come out into Game Pass. But I've had questions, as I'm sure many other people have, is how sustainable will this be for Microsoft in the long run? Like over the course of, say, a typical 6-7 year console generation, will they be able to not only maintain Game Pass, but continue to build heavily on top of it and kind of keep up the pace they're at now? But the numbers that we got for the number of people subscribed to Game Pass through April was a bit surprising, mostly because of how fast the service is growing right now. And we're going to go over that here today, guys. If you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So we're going to head over here. This is Forbes.com. Paul Tassi did an article here on the situation here around the information that came out this past week. And this is actually from Jez Corden at Windows Central. And we also see Paul went ahead and grabbed the other times we've been updated on different numbers for a number of people subscribed to Game Pass, going back a year now to April 2020, with the first time, I believe we had a report around numbers at 10 million subscribers to the service. And then about half a year later, they gained 5 million up to 15 million there. And then throughout that holiday quarter where we had the launch of like the Series X and the Series S going to January, 18 million. So they gained about 3 million there during the holiday times. But then in the first quarter of this year, that being from January to April, apparently they've gained 5 million subscribers to Game Pass, which, as we can see here, places them at 23 million subscribers for the service. And the overall idea that Microsoft has right now is that the Xbox is no longer the big center point for their gaming division. It's not the overall focus. The overall focus is the services side with Game Pass. Everything revolves around Game Pass right now, whether it's PC through Windows, whether it's on your phone with xCloud, or using your Xbox Series X, Series S, or even still Xbox One X or One S. Microsoft just wants to be able to get you to Game Pass. All these other all these other things like a system or a phone is just a vessel essentially to get you to that ultimate destination. So seeing them already get to 23 million subscribers and essentially 5 million subscribers just in the first quarter of this year alone is pretty impressive. And it's going to be interesting as we go through this generation, because the biggest thing that I was thinking about was, well, what has Microsoft released since the Xbox Series X and the S came out? Because people seem pretty happy with Game Pass right now, but like they haven't released any first-party software. And we talked about this when the system first launched, because remember, Halo Infinite was supposed to be there and it got delayed, and that was a big story. Obviously, this big Halo game is getting pushed what appears to be at least a year now. It was Master Chief was on the back of the Series X box when you got it, so obviously things didn't go too well behind the scenes there with 343, but I haven't really seen a lot of people bring that up much since the system came out, that there's not a lot of first-party games from Microsoft there to help drive sales of the system, which would then in turn drive sales of Game Pass. And they still managed to do about 5 million new subscribers just over the course of this first quarter for the year. Now, I do still have questions around Game Pass numbers in general, because it's very likely that Microsoft has, of course, inflated these numbers, since at one point you could buy, a box of Pop-Tarts or a candy bar, and there's a code inside for Game Pass for like a month, and that's probably a way, of course, that Microsoft has worked to get people into the service. But how many of these 23 million have not necessarily paid full price for Game Pass? And that's not like a new strategy or anything. That's what a lot of different companies do with their services. They'll give you like 30 days for free just to try it out, in hopes that you enjoy it and find value in the service and you'll stick around. Or let's face it, with how Netflix is, we forget about it. Like, that's the biggest thing, is a lot of these services just want to kind of blend in with all of your other bills, and it's like $10, $8 here and there, throughout the year, every month, and you just kind of forget about having it until maybe HBO Max announces that, like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat or Godzilla and Kong are going to the service. And you're like, oh yeah, I do have that. I can just go watch it. So obviously Microsoft has to continue building up this number for amount of subscribers to Game Pass for the whole thing to make sense. Like I feel like they need like 70 or 80 million subscribers minimum just so that this whole thing doesn't necessarily fall apart as they go along here. And they're right on track for that. This is accelerating a bit faster than even I was thinking just because of the lack of first-party software from Microsoft being available at the time of launch for this system. But the way Microsoft sees it, it's a long game, so they're probably planning for the next 10 years and maybe 20. If we saw what happened with them buying Bethesda and ZeniMax, clearly they are looking well off into the future for this entire thing. So them getting to a point where maybe they have 100 million Game Pass subscribers, that doesn't restart like when we go to a new console generation. That's the biggest thing these companies face, is that time period between generations. And we've seen all these companies have a hard time with that at one point or another. I mean, like, look what happened with Sony, where they said we believe in generations. They built up that their games were not going to be on PS4 as well as on PS5, right? There's going to be just PS5 games. They're very quiet about it. And then, oh, look, a lot of these games are also on the PlayStation 4. Godfall even, that's a third-party game, but, like, it just got rated for PlayStation 4 this weekend even. So, yeah, the way it looks here with Microsoft, they feel like, hey, if we build this subscriber base, we can continue building on top of it with net positive months for the foreseeable future. They could realistically get to hundreds of millions of Game Pass subscribers. Now, the other thing to remember here is they've been very aggressive to start this year off, and I do question if they're going to be able to keep that kind of breakneck pace up. I mean, dropping Outriders in there day one, Octopath gets announced and then just drops into Game Pass immediately on the Xbox. And we just saw, obviously, MLB The Show 21, which makes a lot of sense because it's a sports title that depreciates. But remember, that is a game that Sony is actually developing, and MLB just said, yeah, we can drop that into Game Pass. Why not? That could be a yearly thing for Microsoft. MLB The Show might just be in Game Pass every single year, and that means that Sony will be developing for Game Pass every single year going forward. It'll be interesting what happens next year on that one, but having them continue this pace would be interesting to see how it continues to accelerate Game Pass growth alongside of first-party titles from Microsoft coming up, which would include Bethesda games, Starfield, right, Elder Scrolls, and so on. So while it was kind of a quiet period for Microsoft themselves when it comes to first-party titles, it seems like people are still subscribing to Game Pass like in droves right now, and that's probably just with all the stuff Microsoft's been doing with Game Pass and putting in a ton of content. Oh, here we are now at 23 million very quickly. Now, I want to bring up one other possibility, and it's a very interesting one to consider based on the history of gaming dating back to like the early 2000s, and that has to do with Xbox Live Gold. Now, we saw Microsoft do some weird stuff with this pretty recently where they tried to double the price, and there was massive backlash because they wanted $120 a year just to have the privilege to play online with these games. And that was absolutely ridiculous, right? So what happens if Microsoft gets to, say, 50 or 60 million Game Pass subscribers? Do they still need Xbox Live Gold if Game Pass, which has Xbox Live Gold in it, overtakes their Xbox Live Gold numbers for subscribers? I kind of feel like Microsoft would get rid of Xbox Live Gold completely. It'll just be free to play online with the Xbox. And, oh, look, here's also Game Pass, which is this awesome service that maybe if they do that, they would see people from Xbox Live Gold maybe trickle over into Game Pass and continue to kind of blow up those numbers. It's a question I posed on Twitter because it does appear that Microsoft has this kind of in mind with like an internal number of people are thinking like 40 or 50 million subscribers. Well, here we are with 23 in April, right? Reportedly from Jez Corden at Windows Central, and a few other people said 22 to 23 million. So what if we get to the end of this year and Halo Infinite's coming out, and they have, we'll give an estimate of like 30 million, as Paul says here in this article. What if Halo Infinite comes out this holiday, it spikes the overall subscriber count up to maybe 35, 36 million throughout the holiday period? We very realistically could get to the first half of next year with that target in mind of 40 to 50 million Game Pass subscribers, which to Microsoft, that's basically them selling systems, really. I know we count these different companies as how many Switches has Nintendo sold, how many PlayStations has Sony sold, and we still say that about Microsoft with their Xboxes, but what Microsoft really wants us to ask is how many subscribers do they have on Game Pass, because there's a chance that next year Microsoft seriously puts some pressure pressure even on Sony and Nintendo by just dropping the charge or the fee to play online with Xbox Live Gold going away. And the reason that is so interesting or even ironic is because Microsoft is the one that showed up with the console that normalized the idea of paying for online, and Sony and Nintendo just kind of followed that formula, and then here's the possibility of Microsoft just completely wiping it out. But let me know what you guys think about these numbers down below, with at least the number of subscribers coming to Game Pass right now accelerating. We're seeing 23 million currently signed up, and where do you think they are at the end of the year when Halo Infinite releases, provided it's good and not just a complete disaster? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.